That Friday night, I stood frozen in front of the photo shelf in my son's house. A whole row of glossy frames. Every family member's face glowing under the party lights, and yet, I was nowhere to be seen. That odd absence felt like a blot of black ink spreading across a white canvas. I remembered clearly standing right beside my granddaughter Lily during that photo shoot. And yet now, every smile, every gaze was there, except for me. And then, right at the edge of the photo, a tiny detail flickered that sent a chill through my chest. Paige. My daughter-in-law. Quickly muttered. Maybe the printer missed a file. And just as quickly switched the subject. As if someone had accidentally brushed against a live wire. But I couldn't pull my eyes away from the photo. Leaning closer, I saw a faint embossed mark along the bottom border. Whitaker Realty staging. That wasn't a family photo at all. It was a real estate staging picture. Staged to sell a house. Why would a so-called family photo carry the stamp of a brokerage? And if it was just a mistake, why was it me, the one who had spent tens of thousands of dollars to provide for this home, who had been erased from every single frame, from that tiny detail? A wave of suspicion rose inside me. As if behind those gleaming glass frames was a shadowy secret. Something that could turn my entire family upside down in a single night. That night, when I got home, I still couldn't sleep. The night lamp cast a pale yellow glow across the wooden bedside table, highlighting the handbag I hadn't yet put away. My fingers slipped inside and brushed against the card Paige had pressed into my hand before we left the dinner. A simple thank you card. Printed with the words, "Thank you for your contribution," on an elegant white background. With a tiny real estate company logo. It should have been nothing more than a harmless keepsake. But my eyes stopped immediately at the upper right corner. A piece of paper had been torn off. Not by accident. The tear was sharp and clean. As if someone had deliberately removed part of a name or a mark. I tilted the card under the lamp and studied it closely. On the back, instead of being blank as usual, there were faint ink stains. Smudged but still legible enough to make out a few words. I squinted. Piecing them together, Parcel 17B, Willow Creek. My throat tightened. Willow Creek. Just those two words made my entire body tremble. Willow Creek was the name of the cabin by the lake. The one Mark, my ex-husband, and I had once called our retirement haven. We bought it the year I turned 50. Every weekend, we would drive 2 hours from Seattle to the lake, bringing Ryan and his sister along to fish, grill, and sit on the wooden porch watching the sun sink into the still water. After the divorce, Ryan swore to me that he had sold the cabin to cover heavy debts. I believed him, though the loss ached in me endlessly. The image of Willow Creek, with its dark wooden frames and the small pier stretching out into the lake, remained an irreplaceable piece of memory. And yet now, the words Parcel 17B had surfaced. As if the house had never disappeared from the property records. Parcel, I knew exactly what that meant. Not a poetic name, but a legal code for a lot of land. And why would it appear on a card from Paige? Tied to a fundraising event for a real estate company, I collapsed onto the sofa, my heart pounding. Memories rushed back the last time I walked out of Willow Creek. My hands still smelling of pine resin. Mark turning away without a glance. I thought that was the end. But if the place had never been sold, who was holding it now? The next morning, I didn't tell anyone about the card. Ryan called, checking in as usual. His voice calm, as if nothing strange had happened the night before. I nodded along, replying absently. But my mind kept circling two words, Willow Creek. By noon, I pulled out the card again, using a magnifying glass to inspect each line of ink. The stain revealed not only Parcel 17B. At the bottom corner, faint to the point of disappearing, I caught 3 more letters, Saint, before the smudge blurred the rest. Likely staging. The same word I had seen embossed on the photo frame at Ryan's house the night before. I muttered under my breath, staging photos, parcel 17B. Willow Creek. My God. What are they doing? A wild hypothesis formed in my mind. Was Paige using that house as part of her brokerage business? But if it had been sold, how could she still be using it? Or had Ryan never sold it at all, but hidden the truth from me? That afternoon, I drove to the old bookstore in the neighborhood. The one I knew sold land maps and local zoning records. The manager, an elderly man named Howard with white hair, was a retired county surveyor. He raised his brows when he saw me rifling through the property maps. What are you looking for? Denise A., parcel in Willow Creek. Parcel 17B. I replied, my voice trembling. Howard nodded knowingly and pulled out a thick stack of records. My eyes scanned the list quickly. And then, at the column marked Current Owner, I saw the name that made me go cold, Ryan Whitaker. I gripped the edge of the table to keep steady. So, he had never sold it. While I thought the cabin was gone, my son had quietly kept it, perhaps even profited from it in ways I never knew. I took a deep breath, anger and confusion flooding through me. For years, I had sent Ryan money whenever he claimed to be in debt, had tolerated Paige's endless charades of extravagant parties. And now, the truth glared at me from a smudge of ink on a card. They might have hidden from me the very place most sacred in my life. I closed the record, folded the property map, and only one question echoed in my head. If Willow Creek was never sold, then what are they using it for? And that was the moment I realized that torn card wasn't just an empty thank you. It was the key to a door leading to a far darker truth. The next morning, the Seattle sunlight still mixed with a thin mist, streaming through the curtains and spilling across the kitchen table where I sat, hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee. My mind lingered on Willow Creek, on those blurred words. I tried to reassure myself that maybe it was all a misunderstanding. But the sharp ache in my chest told me I was getting closer to a secret my son and daughter-in-law never wanted me to uncover. My phone buzzed. A message from Lily, my 19-year-old granddaughter grandma. Are you coming tonight? I frowned. Tonight, I typed back, forcing a light tone. Paige said, it's a private meeting. I guess Grandma isn't invited. Before the screen dimmed, the phone buzzed again. A new message appeared, but this time, it was from Ryan. And just reading the first few words, I knew the message wasn't meant for me. Seat plan, table A, 12 guests. Seat 13 stays empty. If Denise shows up, sit her in the kitchen. My hands began to tremble uncontrollably. My heart pounded, each beat pressing heavy against my chest. I dropped into the chair, the screen glowing bright, exposing words colder than any winter night. Seat 13 stays empty. If Mom shows up, sit her in the kitchen. It wasn't that I had been forgotten. And it wasn't that the printer had missed a file. They had erased me from the table. Deliberately. Calculated. And cruel beyond excuse. I lifted my gaze to my small kitchen. The faint smell of coffee mixed with the familiar scent of old wood. This was once the place where Mark and I, and later Ryan too, sat laughing, talking about school and life. And yet now, the kitchen was the very place they wanted to lock me away. Like a shadow, unworthy of being seen by guests. I gripped the phone tightly, reading the message once more before deleting it. But even if I erased it from the screen, those words were carved into my mind, like a knife etched into wood. In my head, I heard James, my late husband, even though he had been gone for years, Edith. Don't let anyone trample your dignity, not even your children. His voice was steady, warm, certain. Suddenly, I felt as though I was standing at a crossroads, either stay silent and endure, or begin uncovering what was truly happening behind Ryan's closed doors. The email alert chimed. I opened it to see an invitation to a private donor appreciation dinner from Paige's company. The guest list was attached. My eyes ran quickly to the bottom line, exactly 12 names. Mine was not there. The contradiction stung deeper. I had contributed a significant sum toward their house, toward Paige's very career. Yet in the end, I didn't even have a seat at the table. I pressed my palm to my forehead, thoughts swirling. Could Willow Creek, that parcel 17B, be part of this scheme? Had the cabin that once belonged to me become just another card in their deck for lavish parties and appearances? I recalled Paige's evasive look when I asked about the photo last night, the fleeting smile on her lips when she handed me the card. All of it now strung together. Taut like a wire, the staging photo, the torn card, and now this misdirected message. The phone lit up again. Another message from Lily Grandma. Dad and Mom said you're busy tonight. Is that true? I didn't know what to reply. Part of me wanted to tell Lily everything, to let her know her grandmother wasn't absent by choice, but another part urged me to stay silent, to watch longer, to grasp the full picture. I set the phone down, my hand curling into a fist. Inside me, pain and fury collided. I hadn't been forgotten. I had been erased, stripped of the right to be present even in my own family. Outside the window, Seattle rain drizzled, each drop tapping the roof like a drumbeat. I knew, from this moment forward, there would be no turning back. The torn card, the staging photos, and now the wrongfully sent message, all whispered the same truth I had no choice but to face. I lifted the phone once more, opening Ryan's message again. The light from the screen reflected in my eyes. One line, cold as ice, but enough to burn away every illusion I had left. Seat 13 stays empty. That empty chair should have been mine. But they had already decided if I showed up, I was only worthy of sitting in the kitchen. And that was the moment I knew I had to act. Not to reclaim a chair in that room, but to uncover the truth hidden beneath all the glitter. The next morning, the Seattle sky was still covered in a thick, gray fog. Seagulls gliding over damp, shingled rooftops. I pulled on a moss-colored sweater and headed out to the car. The wheels rolled past streets lined with fiery red maples, and my mind held only one destination: Evergreen Credit Union, the bank Mark and I had shared throughout our marriage. When we lived together, Mark had always been careful with money. He often said, "People can lie about feelings, but numbers in a bank account never do." That line echoed loud in my head, like a guidepost. If there was truly something hidden around Willow Creek, the first clue had to be here. The morning teller counter was nearly empty. A young woman with blonde hair tied neatly back gave me a polite smile as I approached. "Good morning. How can I help you?" I handed over my paperwork and asked for a printout of the history of an old account, one that had been dormant since my divorce. I thought it would show only a few small fees or token interest payments. But when I held the stack of papers in my hand, my eyes froze on a single chilling line. Among the little charges, $12 for cloud storage, $45 for card maintenance, was a clear entry. County tax, Willow Creek parcel, 17B. I blinked several times, thinking I had misread. But no. The line repeated regularly every quarter, every year. For 15 straight years, the county tax for Willow Creek had been deducted directly from the account in my name. My hands trembled as I set the paper down on the counter. My throat went dry, as if I'd swallowed a handful of gravel. So, the house had never truly been sold. And all those years, I, the one cast out of Seat 13, had been quietly paying the tax for that place. I lifted my gaze, staring straight into the teller's eyes. "Could you print every document connected to parcel 17B?" she faltered, fingers pausing on the keyboard. "By regulation, You'd need an order from the property owner. I let out a laugh, but it came out hoarse and cracked. If taxes have been pulled from my account for 15 years? Then, if I'm not the owner, who is? Her cheeks flushed red as she nervously called her manager. A few minutes later, an older woman came out, gray hair, sharp eyes. Her name tag read, Linda Howard. The name instantly pulled me back to the days when Mark brought me here. It had been Linda who signed the loan papers for Willow Creek back then. Linda sat down, studying me longer than necessary. Denise, I remember you. Willow Creek. Wasn't it? I swallowed hard. Yes. But I need you to tell me the truth. If Ryan said the house was sold, why am I still paying taxes, and why is my name still tied to parcel 17B? Linda sighed, folding her hands together on the desk. I can't disclose everything unless you prove you still have legal interest. But I can show you a public extract. She slid a few photocopied sheets across the desk, stamped with bright red seals. I pulled them closer. Property owner Ryan Whitaker and Paige Whitaker, trustees. Beneficiary Denise M. Carter. My vision darkened. Beneficiary, the beneficiary. My name had never vanished. But instead of being the owner, I was left hanging in the trust documents, a pawn on the family's property chessboard. My voice shook as I asked, when did they set up this trust? Linda answered quietly, about 12 years ago. I remember Ryan saying it was to protect family assets. He even brought in a power of attorney with your signature. I jerked upright. My signature, Linda nodded. It looked identical. But now, thinking back, I'm not sure you were actually present that day. I pressed my palms hard against the desk, my breathing heavy. I had never signed any such power of attorney. If my signature was on those papers, there were only two explanations. Either I had been tricked into signing a stack of ambiguous documents in the chaos after the divorce, or the signature was forged. I whispered, almost to myself, Willow Creek never really left their hands, and I'm just the name they use for legitimacy. Linda's eyes softened with sympathy. Denise, if you want to go deeper, you'll need a lawyer. These things usually don't stop at property. They cut into trust. Trust, a word that should have been ordinary, but now felt like a knife twisting into my chest. I had trusted Ryan, trusted Paige, trusted that every bill I covered, every check I wrote, was for family. Now, it all might have been a trap they set, one I walked into willingly. I left the bank in a drizzle. The papers in my hands trembled with each breath. Sitting in the car, my tears blurred the pages. Yet my mind felt oddly clear. The pieces were clicking into place: the staging photo, the torn card, the Seat13 text, and now the tax record. Willow Creek had never been sold. I was still the legal beneficiary. But why had Ryan hidden it from me? Why was Paige using that place for staging? As though it were just another property in her real estate portfolio. And most of all, how many other secrets had been buried under that wooden roof all these years? I started the engine, merging slowly into Seattle's crowded streets. In the rearview mirror, my face showed deep lines, but my eyes burned with a fire I hadn't felt in years. A fire made of both pain and resolve. Because now, I knew I was no longer just a guest at Seat13. I was the only one left with memory, with documents, and with the will to pull back the curtain that still covered Willow Creek. That evening, Lily stopped by, her eyes shy but warm. She wrapped her arms around me in a hug that lasted longer than usual. I could feel her breath tremble, like she wanted to say something but didn't have the courage. Then from her denim backpack, she pulled out a small box of lemon bars, the paper still dark with buttery fingerprints. Grandma. I thought it was weird. So I snuck this out, she said. I raised an eyebrow. The lemon bars, the kind I knew Paige always ordered from Sugar and Thyme, near Bellevue, smelled faintly of lemon and butter. Paige was meticulous when entertaining the same glasses. Napkins folded just so. Even the pastries had to be from the classiest shop. I lifted the lid. The scent of fresh lemon and rich butter swept me back to a distant memory, the last birthday at Willow Creek. Mark had baked a lemon pie himself and hid a new car key inside, as a sort of second proposal, a silly joke. But so sweet I laughed all afternoon. That tender, bittersweet memory snapped when I saw something at the bottom of the box that shouldn't have been in a pastry shop. A small brass key, heavy in my hand, taped carefully to the underside. Tied to it was a dark paper tag with slanted handwriting, Box 23B. I froze, my mind scrambling. Lily lowered her voice. I saw Paige slip the box into the VIP guest gift bag. But then she changed her mind and shoved it under the table. I noticed her glancing at it sometimes. So I took it. I was quiet for a long moment, my fingers tracing the paper tag. 23B. A label that was clearly not random. Not a pantry shelf. Not a seat number at a party. It looked like a drawer number. A vault number. A storage slot. A code to hide something no one outside the VIPs was supposed to know. Sweetheart. How did you dare to take it? I asked. My voice low but edged. Lily bit her lip. I just felt uneasy. Things have been weird lately. She's hiding stuff. And Dad said Mom didn't invite Grandma. I didn't want you to be left out anymore. I tightened my grip on the key, my chest softening. My only granddaughter in that house had thought of me, quietly offering evidence I never would have expected. I set the box on the table and pulled out a chair, trying to keep my voice steady. Did you hear them say anything about that number? What is 23B? No, I only heard them whisper. I caught words like box and safe before they stopped when they saw me. Safe. My heart skipped. Safe box. A safe deposit box. At a bank. At the post office. Or in some storage system. Mark and I had once rented a safe deposit box at the bank to keep divorce papers. But later I closed it. 23B could be a similar box, but what could Paige be hiding that she needed to keep so locked away? The brass key lay in my palm, the light catching its old gold sheen. A small object. But it carried the weight of a challenge. My thoughts drifted back to Willow Creek Mark, hiding the key inside the old pie. Ryan's boyish laughter racing down the porch. Now, there was another key, attached to a secret that might drown out all those lovely memories. Grandma. Lily hesitated. Are you going to use it? I looked straight at her. If they're trying to hide something, the more reason I should know. But, Lily, you mustn't tell anyone about this. Especially not Paige. She nodded, worried and resolute at once. I knew she understood. After Lily left that night, I sat alone at the kitchen table. Seattle rain dotted the window. The open box of lemon bars sent up a gentle tart scent mixed with damp wood. I turned the key over and over, thinking about 23B like it was a cipher. Was it a key to a bank safe or a storage compartment at Willow Creek, the place I had believed was gone forever? The mixture of excitement and unease rose in me, like standing before a giant door that, once unlocked, it could fling open every secret Ryan and Paige had been hiding. I inhaled slowly and told myself, if one key can tear down this wall of lies, then I have to find the right lock. And so the lemon bar box, whether by accident or design, became the messenger that handed me the tool to pry open another layer of secrets. A layer deeper, darker, and certainly more dangerous. Sunday morning. Bellevue was shrouded in fog and rain, woven together into a heavy curtain. I gripped the brass key in my pocket, my heartbeat pounding like a secret drum, pulling me toward the Liberty Safe Deposit building in the center of town. The building wasn't large, but its concrete architecture and thick glass doors made it look like a cold, Solid block of stone, unyielding. Closed off. The security desk sat just inside. The man in a navy blue uniform glanced down at the tag on the key. He gave me a polite smile. But his voice dropped. Ah. Box 23B. No one's opened that in a long time. I stiffened, but only nodded slightly. My footsteps echoed down the stone-tiled hallway. The thick walls and dim fluorescent lights cast a haze over the floor, making the space feel stifling. Like a vault of memories. The metal door swung open with a groan. A gust of cold air spilled out, carrying the damp smell of old paper and steel. Inside, Box Chugotrebe sat still, as if it had been waiting all these years. I slid in the key and turned. The click echoed, sharp enough to raise goosebumps. Inside the box, there was no gold. No stacks of cash as I had once imagined. Only three things: a charcoal-colored cassette tape, a thick envelope sealed with red wax, and a neatly clipped packet of papers. I took a long breath and lifted the packet. The bold words on the first page sent a chill straight through me. Addendum to deed. Each word struck like a blade. Final authority rests with Denise M. Carter in all cases of transfer, including trust transfer. Beneath it was Mark's signature. The date, 3 months after the divorce was finalized. I dropped into the cold metal chair, my heart racing, my head spinning. What did it mean, after the divorce? Mark had quietly signed a document giving me final authority over Willow Creek. That house had never legally left my hands. Everything Ryan had told me was a cover. My fingers traced the familiar handwriting. Mark's signature was still firm, slanted to the right, like his old voice saying, "Denise, I would never let you lose that place." I trembled, caught between grief and fury. Setting the packet down, I opened the sealed envelope. Inside was a thick stack of statements. My eyes skimmed the lines: every payment for the cabin's rent, steady for 7 years. All of it funneled through a company named Willow Hospitality LLC. My eyes narrowed, stopping at the office address. It matched exactly with Whitaker Realty. Whitaker. That name cut into me like a blade. Paige had been a Whitaker before she ever married Ryan. So this shell company, who owned it, was it just a front to turn Willow Creek into a money-making property while erasing me from the picture? I laid the statements down, breathing hard, my chest aching with something between pain and rage. It was all becoming clearer. Ryan had never sold the house. Paige had folded it into her real estate web. And me, I had been the one paying taxes all along, while being erased from every photo, every seat, every invitation. My gaze shifted to the cassette still lying there. On its faded silver label, scrawled in rough handwriting, were the words, "W.C. Private. W.C. Willow Creek." A shiver ran down my spine. If the papers were the legal shell, then this tape might be the heart of the truth. Who had put it here, Mark or someone else? And what was inside? A message or evidence? I slipped the cassette into my bag, along with the packet and the envelope. Stepping outside, the Bellevue rain poured harder. I lifted my face, letting the drops strike my skin, sharp and awakening. In my hands now wasn't just a key, it was a vault of secrets, the legal authority, the rental records, and a cassette promising to tear open everything they had tried to bury. And I knew then. The game Ryan and Paige were about to face was no longer a glittering dinner with Seat 13 left empty. It was going to be a confrontation where every detail, every piece of evidence, would land with the weight of stone. That night, I sat staring at my phone screen for a long while before pressing send. Just one short message to Ryan: "I'll be there." No emoji. No explanation. Just those 4 words. But I knew. Once they lit up my son's phone, they would stir an undercurrent neither Ryan nor Paige had anticipated. The road leading to Ryan's house glowed with lights from the mansions of Bellevue. I drove slowly, both hands gripping the steering wheel, feeling as though each curve carried me closer to a silent battle. When I stepped into the dining room, the scene was exactly as the misplaced text had described. A round table draped in white linen, 12 chairs neatly arranged, and then, in the corner of the kitchen, right next to the humming dishwasher, seat number 13 stood alone, empty. Paige stepped out from the bar, her crimson satin dress hugging her figure, her smile as cold as gold-plated steel. "So you came. Tonight's a little tight, so there's no room at the main table." I didn't answer. I simply pulled out a chair and sat down right beside Ryan. From my handbag, I drew out the photocopied packet Mark's addendum to the deed and laid it flat on the table, right in front of my son. "You signed this," I said, my voice low but firm. "You know full well that selling Willow Creek was invalid, don't you?" The air thickened as though the entire room had been pressed shut. A glass clinked faintly, then hit the surface, like someone had set it down too hard. The atmosphere hung heavy, like kitchen smoke that refused to clear. Ryan lifted his gaze to me, his eyes flickering with confusion. He turned toward Paige. Silence fell across the room. At the far end of the table, Lily clasped her hands together, holding her breath. Paige raised her wineglass as if nothing were amiss. Her voice was sweet but searing. "No one knows the law better than Ken Whitaker, my uncle. A photocopy. You really think it means anything?" I turned my head, pointing at the framed picture hanging on the wall, its gold trim gleaming beneath the chandelier. It was the very staging photo I had seen the other night, the Willow Creek living room. Its window opening to the lake, the weeping willow bending low across the water. "If it's just staging," I said slowly, each word slicing the air, "then why is the green-striped curtain I sewed myself still there? And the half-moon burn mark on the wood floor, the scar from the broken iron Mark left one winter night? Both of those only exist in my house." Ryan lowered his eyes, placing his hand on the packet, trying to pull it toward him. I held it firm. For the first time, I saw the uncertainty in the eyes that had once been my pride. My voice dropped, but it carried across the table. "This dinner isn't about seating. I want to make it clear from now on. I will no longer support this household financially. And tomorrow," I paused, locking eyes, first with Ryan, then with Paige, "I'm going to Willow Creek Loths." The last sound came from the dishwasher, water draining into the pipes. The room was still brightly lit, but everyone sat as if under a spotlight, with no way out. The next morning, I left Bellevue while the sky was still veiled in a thin mist. The road back to Willow Creek was so familiar that every curve, every tree seemed to still bear the imprint of my footsteps from years past. The tires rolled along the winding path skirting the forest's edge. The sound of rubber against asphalt, like a somber melody, stretched out. As the thick rows of pines thinned, the lake opened before me like a cold mirror, reflecting the silvery gray sky. And there it was, my cabin still standing. The porch roof peeked out beneath the willow's shade. The wooden steps still bearing the small crack I once meant to patch one summer, but never did. I stopped the car and sat still for a few seconds. My heartbeat slowed, but my hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. Stepping out, my shoes sank into the damp ground, the smell of decaying wood and moss saturating the air. Each breath carried me back to Mark, to Ryan as a boy, to summers filled with laughter. But reality stood colder. The front lock had been replaced. Beside it, a video doorbell glowed faintly, silently tracking my every move. I pressed the bell. The chime rang inside. Unfamiliar, more foreign than any sound this place had ever known. The door swung open. A middle-aged man appeared, wearing a black jacket with the logo Willow Hospitality. His face was neither a neighbor's nor a relative's. He looked at me, brow furrowed. "You booking a stay?" I stayed silent, holding his gaze. Then I pulled from my handbag the documents, one by one. I laid them in my hand, the photocopy of the addendum to deed, the rental ledger, and finally, the old wedding photo taken right on this porch. I held them out, my voice slow but sharp. "Do you recognize these? This is my house." The man froze. His eyes wavered, like someone caught red-handed. He stammered, We're just management. The owner is the company." I stepped closer. My eyes locked on his. "Who is the company's director?" He swallowed hard, tugging at the edge of his jacket as if to hide the logo. Then he muttered, his voice hoarse, "Paige Whitaker Carter." In that instant, the wind rushed off the lake, carrying with it the smell of damp wood and cold vapor. I closed my eyes for exactly 3 seconds, letting the air fill my chest. When I opened them, my gaze had shifted, no longer trembling, but strangely calm. "Listen carefully," I said, my tone steady, unwavering. "You have 14 days to stop accepting any bookings. Every lock will be changed, and the court will handle the rest." The man stood frozen, his face draining of color. Behind him, the cabin remained still. But now it seemed to breathe with me, bearing witness as I reclaimed every inch of land that was always mine. In that moment, I no longer saw seat number 13 left empty, or the glittering dinner party. I saw only Willow Creek, my home, waiting to be restored to its rightful owner. A light Seattle rain fell that morning, the drops like silver threads, scattering evenly across the car roof. I drove straight to Attorney Margaret Doyle's office, housed in an old red brick building downtown. The glass door bore gold letters, faded with age, "Doyle and Associates." I had chosen her not just for her reputation, but for the way she handled complicated disputes, decisive, blunt, yet never stripping her clients of dignity. Mrs. Doyle, a woman in her 60s with a full crown of silver hair and piercing blue eyes, greeted me with a firm handshake. We sat in a paneled oak room, the walls lined with shelves heavy with files. I laid the stack of documents on her desk, the addendum to the deed, the rental ledger, and the sealed envelope. She read slowly, line by line, her eyes narrowing before she finally looked up. "You said there's also a cassette," I nodded. From my bag, I pulled out the dark cassette, its silver label nearly faded. Mrs. Doyle's old tape recorder whirred and hissed as it swallowed the tape. At first came static, then a low, raspy voice, tired, but steady. "Denise, if you're hearing this, it means you've found the key." I froze. My heart pounded. My vision blurred. It was Mark's voice. After all these years, I had thought I'd never hear that familiar sound again. His voice trembled faintly, laced with sighs. "I signed the addendum so that if anyone, even me, even Ryan, tried to transfer against your will, every transaction would be void. I was foolish to trust some people. If I don't get the chance to say I'm sorry, use these papers the hardest way you can. Don't let anyone seat you in the kitchen again." The sound fractured, stretching into silence that seemed to last forever. I laughed through tears, covering my mouth so the sobs wouldn't escape too loudly. I laughed because even after we had parted ways, Mark still remembered. I laughed because he used the very image of sitting in the kitchen as a warning to me, just like the message Ryan had mistakenly sent. Wiping my eyes, I looked up at Mrs. Doyle. For several seconds she said nothing. Then she gave a slight nod, placed her hand on the stack of papers, and spoke in a clipped, steady voice. "We'll file an emergency motion with the county court. Request a temporary order freeze all assets, cut off any cash flow from Willow Creek, and investigate the conflict of interest between Paige and her family's company. I stayed silent, listening only to the rain tapping against the window frame. The air was heavy with the scent of old wood and paper. Yet faintly, I caught another smell, lemon. Perhaps it lingered from the pastry box last night. Or maybe it was memory rising unbidden. That lemon scent carried me back to afternoons at Willow Creek. Mark baking lemon pie in the kitchen while I patched the green-striped curtains. I drew in a long breath. The lemon. Mark's voice. And the red-stamped papers before me, all fused together as undeniable proof. Mrs. Doyle slid the file toward me for my signature. I'll handle the rest. But Denise, prepare yourself. Someone who builds an entire company to manipulate an estate will not let go easily. I nodded slowly. The trembling inside me was gone, replaced by a resolve that had begun to take root. Outside, the blare of car horns drifted up from Pike Street. Mingling with the rain, I knew, once the motion was filed, the game would no longer be in Ryan's or Paige's hands, and for the first time in years, I felt myself stepping out of that cold kitchen corner, straight into the light of truth. I left the lawyer's office, my breath turning white in Seattle's damp cold. Pike Street gleamed wet under the rain. Neon lights, casting reflections across the slick sidewalks. I opened my car door, ready to get in, when my eyes caught something unusual. A brown envelope, carefully tucked beneath the wiper. Scrawled in black ink on the front, "Don't trust Ryan yet. K." My heart jolted, pounding hard. With trembling hands, I pulled the envelope free and tore it open. Inside were no ordinary letters but printed documents. On top lay an internal invoice from Whitaker Realty. The words standing out: staging cabin, influencer package. I frowned. Cabin Willow Creek. At the bottom, a printed email with the subject line cut off, but the words inside froze me. Seat13 stays empty page. I gripped the paper tight, feeling the fragments whirl together. K. Just one letter. But it sparked a name immediately. Ken Whitaker. Paige's uncle. The very man she proudly flaunted as the real estate law mastermind backing her family. Why would Ken send me these documents? And if he truly stood on my side, what was his purpose? That evening, as I sat in the living room under the warm golden lamp, papers spread across the table. The phone rang. An unfamiliar number flashed on the screen. I hesitated for a second, then picked up. On the other end, a man's voice, raspy, urgent, with no preamble. "Denise, this is Ken. Listen carefully. I don't have much time." I froze. It was him. Why are you helping me?" I asked cautiously. Ken exhaled, the flick of a lighter sparking, then snapping shut. "Paige is using Willow Hospitality like an octopus. She built shell companies, laundering money through the cabin. I warned Ryan. But the boy, he owes me 6 figures. He has no way out." My chest tightened. Ryan, my own son, indebted to his wife's uncle. All those years I had bailed him out, paid off debts, and that had only been the tip of the iceberg. Ken pressed on, his voice quickening. "The key in the lemon cake box. I asked Lily to give it to you. I can't show up openly, but I needed you to see. This is as far as I can go. The rest, you'll have to do yourself." I stiffened, clutching the phone tighter. "You said, Lily, does she know?" "No. I only told her you needed to find it. She thought it was a game. But the truth is different." In my mind, Lily's clear eyes flashed the way she handed me that pastry box. Innocent, unaware that she had just become the unwitting bridge in a hidden war. Ken's voice dropped, almost a whisper. "Denise, Paige isn't just ambitious. She's ruthless. Willow Creek isn't the only place. Watch yourself. The line went dead. The prolonged beep echoed in my ear. I sat motionless for minutes, my heart hammering in chaotic rhythms. In the room, the faint scent of lemon from last night's pastry seemed to linger. I closed my eyes. Everything swirled into a storm. Mark's words on the cassette, the evidence in the deposit box, and now this brief, loaded call from Ken Whitaker. A man I had once thought of as the adversary was now the one opening yet another door. But this door didn't lead directly into the light. It might plunge into a deeper pit, where secrets and debts tangled into a snare. I set the phone down on the table, my mind overflowing with questions. What debt had Ryan truly taken on? How many more shell companies had Paige built? And did he really want to help me? Or was he simply using me as another pawn in the Whitaker family's game outside? Seattle's wind howled through the window frame, dragging in the chill and the scent of wet rain. I folded my arms and sat still. But in my head, the next steps had already begun to form. The temporary hearing opened that morning at the King County Courthouse. The entire courtroom was packed. Rows of oak benches lined the chamber, whispers mingling with the rustle of papers and the nervous tapping of shoes. The air was so dense it felt like it could be cut with a knife. Paige entered. She wore a cream-colored suit, her stride upright, her face glowing with a polished smile, as if this were a glamorous press conference, not a hearing about asset fraud. Sitting beside her, Ryan kept his head bowed, his hands twisted together, unable to look up at me. Attorney Margaret Doyle rose and stepped into the center of the courtroom. Her voice was sharp, each word falling like rivets hammered into steel. Your Honor, this is the original addendum to deed, retrieved from Deposit Box 23B at Liberty Safe Deposit. It bears the signature of Mark Carter, with clear dates. The content affirms final authority of disposition belongs to the plaintiff, Mrs. Denise M. Carter. Under any circumstance of transfer, that means every subsequent transaction, even under a trust, is invalid. A wave of murmurs rippled through the room. I saw Paige's shoulders stiffen, though her smile remained strained and brittle. Mrs. Doyle pressed on, not allowing her space to react. This is a county tax record, proving that Willow Creek Parcel 17B taxes have been deducted from the plaintiff's account consistently for 15 years. And this is the cash flow chart showing rental income funneled directly into Willow Hospitality LLC, operated by the defendant, Mrs. Paige Whitaker Carter. The court clerk flicked on the projector. A bluish glow lit up the large screen behind the judge. The staging photo appeared the Willow Creek living room, its window opening onto the still lake. The green-striped curtains I once sewed by hand. And across the pale wood floor, plain as day, the half-moon burn mark left when Mark tipped a candle during my 40th birthday celebration. The room fell silent. Only faint whispers and the clerk's pen tapping on the desk could be heard. The judge, a gray-haired man, leaned back in his chair, his eyes cold as they turned toward the defense table. How does the defendant explain this addendum and the taxes deducted from the plaintiff's account? This time, Paige's smile vanished. Her face drained pale. Ryan suddenly lurched to his feet. His voice shook, as if a hand were tightening around his throat. I thought Mom had given us the right to decide. I needed the money. The words cut down like a blade, not only into me, but into the son I once raised. The boy who had once run laughing around the porch of that cabin. I turned my head, searching for Lily. She sat among the spectators, her eyes brimming but shining with clarity. That gaze, clear and steady, was like a small flame igniting in the heavy room. Slowly, I stood. In my mind flickered the image of seat number 13. Abandoned in the kitchen the other night, the seat meant for no one. the seat they had tried to force on me. I drew a deep breath and spoke. Low, but resonant. Your Honor. I request an emergency order, freeze all accounts of Willow Hospitality, forbid any consumption or transfer of assets, and compel the defendant to surrender keys and interim management authority to me during the trial. The air in the room seemed to solidify. I could hear every breath, every faint shuffle of shoes across the wooden floor. The judge furrowed his brow, glanced quickly down at the addendum, then struck the gavel with a dry crack. Paige clenched her teeth, her eyes burning as if to incinerate everything in front of her. Ryan collapsed back into his chair, his shoulders shaking, and I remained standing tall, feeling that at last I had stepped out of that cold kitchen corner, straight into the center of the brightly lit room, where truth had no place left to hide. The court order was issued so quickly that even I couldn't believe it. The sharp crack of the judge's gavel still echoed in my ears as I rode with 2 court officers and a locksmith back toward Willow Creek. The winding forest road felt like it was leading me straight into the past, where every summer with Mark was etched with laughter, the sound of waves, and the faint scent of lemon carried in the breeze. The police car's amber lights flashed in front of the gate. The same middle-aged manager from before stepped out, his Willow Hospitality jacket still crisply folded. He tried to remain calm, but couldn't hide the unease in his eyes as he looked at the court order held before him. We're only following the contract, one of the officers cut him off coolly. As of now, that contract is suspended. You can return when the court makes a final ruling. Today, every lock gets changed. I stood on the porch, watching each old lock fall away with a clatter, like the snapping limbs of an octopus that had stretched its arms too far. A breath of relief escaped me, tinged with a lump in my throat. Just then, a short message from Ken flashed on my phone. I've sent Mrs. Doyle another recording of Paige. From here, I can't be involved anymore. I read it over and over, feeling the fracture inside the Whitaker clan. Paige thought she controlled an unshakable web, but now its arms and strands were unraveling. While the officers wrote their report, Lily stepped out of the car. She wore a thick coat, her long hair tousled by the night wind. Quietly, she walked inside and placed her hand on the half-moon burn mark on the living room floor. A sad smile touched her lips. Grandpa was such a klutz. I remember he used to say, "Only candles can keep the secrets of the heart." I swallowed hard and sat beside her. The porch light spilled into the room, mingling with the scent of aged wood. I smoothed Lily's hair, feeling as if I were comforting both her and myself. Outside the window, the old willow tree bent its shadow over the dark lake. The lake wind swept through, casting our shadows on the wooden floor, splitting, merging again like 2 lives trying to reconnect. "Will you stay with Grandma tonight?" I asked softly. "Yes. I want to stay here," Lily replied, her eyes shining. We lit the oven together. I pulled out the old recipe, measuring each spoon of flour, each slice of butter, then grated lemon zest. Lily mixed the batter carefully, her hands clumsy but eager. As the lemon bars began to bake, the whole house seemed to come alive again, the scent of butter and citrus filling the air, chasing away the cold and the shadows, pushing back the years of absence from its true owner. I walked to the wooden shelf by the window. In my hand was the brass key, the token that had uncovered every hidden secret. I placed it inside a clear glass jar and set it high on the shelf. That small gesture felt like a ritual. I spoke, loud enough for Lily to hear, and for the house to hear, "I'm home." Lily nodded quietly, her eyes glowing with trust. Outside, the waves lapped gently at the shore, as if answering back. We sat at the wooden table, the lemon bars warm between us. Lily cut a small piece and smiled. "Grandma, it feels like this house was never gone at all. It was just waiting for you to come back." I squeezed her hand, a bittersweet ache rising in my chest. Willow Creek was never just a cabin. It was the witness to love, to betrayal, and now to return. The officers finished their report. The locksmith packed his tools. Inside, only the creak of the old wood in the wind remained, and the soft laughter of a grandmother and granddaughter over fresh lemon bars. I knew this was only the beginning. The octopus wasn't entirely severed, but its longest, strongest arm had been cut off, and for the first time in years, I felt the house breathing in rhythm with me. A week later, I received an email from Paige. The tone was so polite it felt fake, Denise. We should negotiate. For the family. For the kids. Reading it felt like swallowing thorns. After glancing through it, Doyle only smirked. We're not in a rush. They're burning through cash. If they're sending emails first, it means they're losing patience. That same afternoon, Ryan sent me a private message. The words were hurried, like someone cornered Mom. I'm sorry. I'm being held hostage by a debt. I was wrong. I typed a single short line. Cold, but still leaving a door open. If you want to fix it, then sign. That night, I stood on the porch. Lake Washington stretched out before me. Moonlight scattering across its surface in rippling silver. The cold wind carried the smell of damp willow leaves and the familiar scent of wood. Lily quietly pushed the door open, wearing a faded hoodie, her hands stuffed deep in the pockets. She stayed silent for a moment, then whispered, Grandma. My mom scheduled a viewing for a new house tomorrow afternoon. I happened to see the plan. Seat 13 in the layout is empty again. I turned to her and caught the corner of her lips curl into a bitter smile. She's scared of that number, she added, her voice tinged with sarcasm. I shook my head slightly. My eyes on the lake, where the moonlight shimmered like thin sheets of silver spread over the water. No. Paige isn't afraid of the number. She's afraid of the empty place. Lily furrowed her brow, as if wanting to ask more, but then stayed silent. Maybe she understood emptiness can be scarier than any number because it proves absence. A lack of control. The presence of something beyond Paige's reach. We turned off every light in the house except for a single old yellow bulb glowing from the kitchen. That small light shone on the corner of the table where, years ago, the chair bore its burn mark. It was also where Mark once hid the key inside a piece of lemon pie, setting off the story now burning like a fire no one could put out. I sat down, my hand gliding over the rough wooden surface. Lily hugged her knees, resting her head on my shoulder. Outside, the lake stayed still, as if it had never witnessed all the turmoil. But I knew this was only the calm before a new storm. Paige would never accept quiet defeat. When Lily drifted to sleep on the long chair, I stepped onto the porch again. The wind whipped through my hair, cold enough to make me shiver. Yet my heart burned hot, as if I were holding a torch. A torch, not just to light up the truth, but to burn away whatever deceit remained. The next morning, I was getting ready to head back to Seattle to meet Doyle. On the way to the car, I froze. Right there on the lawn lay the white and red SOLD sign that Willow Hospitality had once planted so proudly, now flipped face down. The night wind knocking it over, its wooden back smeared with mud. I walked slowly toward it, bent down, and let my fingers glide over its cold, damp edge. A footprint was pressed into the back, not mine, not Lily's. I looked up. The front door of the cabin was ajar, the new lock we'd installed gleaming, but the door was not locked. I clenched my fists, my heart pounding. The wind whipped across the porch, the willow branches at the lake bending as if to signal something. And in that moment, I knew the game wasn't over. Someone had stepped ahead of me. When they returned home, they found the sold sign lying face down on the lawn, and the front door unlocked. My dear friend, by now I'm sure each of you feels something rising inside. Maybe you're asking yourself if it were you, if you found yourself pushed out of the dinner table. Out of the very home you built, would you stay silent? Or stand up to reclaim the truth? Family is where we place our trust. But sometimes, it's also where that trust is tested most deeply. I truly hope to hear your thoughts. How do you feel about my journey? Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between family ties and justice? Share your story in the comments because who knows? Your story might be the comfort and strength someone else needs right now. If this story has touched your heart, please follow the channel to continue with the next episodes, where every family, every shadowed corner, holds secrets yet to be told. Every follow not only helps this channel grow, but helps us build a community where no voice is forgotten. From the bottom of my heart, I send my sincere thanks for listening and spending your precious time with this story. Your presence makes me believe no one deserves to be pushed out of Seat 13 in their own home.